Now, I'd like to introduce our guest panellists for the night, Daniel Achow of Service Central and Matt McDonald of BSI. A big round of applause, please. Welcome, guys. Thank you for coming along. Now, tonight we're discussing we're going to find out a bit about Service Central, but we're also going to be talking about how to actually access government grants and some of the processes involved in accessing venture capital. But before we begin, we're going to find out a bit about Service Central. So Daniel, would you like to start? I should click on now. Just give it a sec. Yep.
There we go.
Cool.
Service Central is the easy way to find trades and services. So rather than going to evil places like the Yellow Pages or the local newspaper or Google and searching through and recalling all these businesses and hoping to God that they can actually help you, that they're available, qualified and interested in the type of work that you need them to do. You just simply call up Service Central, call 1-800-SERVICE, tell us what you need, tell us how many businesses you'd like to call you, and the businesses call you back.
So we're looking for plumbers, what kind of services?
Yeah, I was looking through the stats today, and about 15% of our work comes from plumbers, from people requesting plumbers, another 12% from people requesting electricians, so we're really strong on trades, and from a marketing perspective, we've been focusing on trades and hospitals.
Okay, now you've been running this business 2 years now?
Yeah.
Yep, and you've had to, I was talking to you before, you initially invested your own money into it? Yep, and then you recently went and got some venture capital. Yeah,
so up until a month or so ago, all the money came from myself and my dad.
Yep.
So, beg, borrow and steal from friends and family.
Family's great for that, aren't they? Yep, fantastic. Now I'll hand it over to Matt for a sec. Matt, tell us a bit about what you do.
Yeah, well, BSI is a corporate advisory firm that's sort of focused on three main areas. I look after private equity capital raising. We also have a government grant division and a general sort of corporate advisory division, and they're all sort of intrinsically linked in that we help our private equity companies that are looking for capital to raise government grants. We then use some of the government grants to fund our consulting fees to get them investor ready to present to investors. We then hopefully raise private equity funding for the companies and then look to other forms of government grant to help match that private equity funding to bring in a pool of funding which we then ideally help them effectively utilise to get to the next stage of their development, which could be commercialising a new product or growing a business and taking it to the next level of development. So we have a strong network of private equity investors which cover the whole gamut of providers of private equity funding in Australia, from angel investors and venture capital funds to private groups and strategic investors. We also have our own investment fund, and we have strong links to government and strong access to various levels of government grants. So
fantastic. So who's looking for some government grants? Yep, few of you. Who wants venture capital? Yep. Fantastic.
We usually find that the companies the early stage companies that want venture capital, they don't have a whole lot of spare cash for anything, let alone paying what they perceive to be high priced advisory services, and so we look to maximise the government grants to subsidise our services, but also to maximise that pool of funding that the company has, and also to minimise the dilution, because most if not all the government grant programs are usually a grant and don't involve giving away equity.
So what is the typical business that you work with? What do they look like? What stage of growth are they at?
Well, traditionally, we've focused on early stage technology-based companies that, and there's a few key criteria that they all need to have. They need to have a product or service that's better than anything else, that's got some sort of competitive advantage. It's not just a Me Too business. They need to have some way of protecting that competitive advantage. They need to be solving a problem, which is pretty important. They can't just be building it and they will come, as they say. So there needs to be a problem that they solve. That problem needs to be large, ideally a global opportunity, because early stage investors, it's pretty high risk, and they need to be prepared to lose all their money. But to compensate them for that risk, there needs to be the potential for a pretty high return. And I mean, there's a few other things, but management and the people are usually key.
Yep.
If it's like a marriage. If they don't get along, or if they sense problems or just personality clashes early on, then it's not going to work.
So, I mean, whether or not we're actually seeking government funding, the key things that you said before are things that we should be doing in our businesses anyway, in terms of the competitive edge and making sure that we're actually solving a problem.
Yeah, I suppose that those sort of things are when you're starting up a business, and we base our criteria on what our investors are looking for. So what we look for is what the investors are looking for.
So what are the different types of investors that are out there?
Yep. Okay. Well, there's a whole range. There's Daniel was talking about the friends and family. There's the initial stage is usually they call it the 3 Fs, which is the friends, family, and fools.
Okay.
And,
I was scared of what you were going to say then, but okay.
and when you've got a concept, there's not a whole lot of places that you can find money to fund that concept from in your mind to something that you can touch and feel. There's not a lot of seed, they call it seed investment, and there's not a lot of seed money. And unfortunately, people have to mortgage their houses or go to their parents or their friends or family to scrounge up enough to get something that they can, to validate the concept, or to have something that a more professional type investor will look at. Then there's angel type investors, which are high net worth individuals that can be anything from retired successful businessmen, successful business people to people that have a successful professional career and just want something on the side.
Yeah.
And they range from people who are looking for things in the same industry as them to wanting to get completely outside of their industry to find something new, to put something back. So you get a whole range of angel type investors.
So what's expected of the business owner or the company when money is put into the business from angel investors, for example?
Well, there's a whole range of things. They're not sort of just investing their money for fun. They want to make a return, and so the entrepreneur, one of the biggest things that they need to face is to give up a level of control of their business. And
who hates giving up control in your business? Who's going to admit to it? I'm a control freak.
Yeah, so when you're bringing someone in and they're investing their own money into a high-risk venture, there needs to be certain processes and procedures and governance that gives them a certain level of comfort that their money is doing what it should be doing.
Do they have a percentage of say in what you actually do?
It depends. Definitely. Usually they will want a seat on the board of the company.
Yep.
But it depends. Usually the entrepreneur will want them on the board, because one of the beauties of angel investors is that the cash is great, but the strategic benefits and the experience and everything else that they bring to the table is sometimes more important than just the money. And so you usually want them as involved as they can be if you obviously pick the right investor. And one of our jobs is not just to get the money, but to match up to find the right money.
Yep. So Daniel, tell us a bit about your experience in terms of actually having an investor come in. What's it been like for you?
Giving up control is a interesting experience completely. We had to provide a lot of information, an absolute ton of information, and myself and my dad, the co-founders of the business, we spent probably 3 months of our lives providing report after report into the intimate detail of the business, and then over and above that, going through the due diligence process and providing details of every single employment contract, every agreement that we've ever done with an external provider, all of our media agreements, all of our IT and all that type of thing. So we really had to have a good solid management team that could actually run the business.
Yep.
Whilst the two most senior people in the business didn't get to have a look at any part of the business for 3 months as we were finding all this info.
So when you first started Service Central, did you know before you started it that you were going to seek extra funding down the track?
Well, I knew that it was going to take over the world, and
world domination.
Absolutely. How like the original concept was that you develop this black box that does all of the matching between the providers and the consumers, and we don't even need a single staff member, and it's going to be cash flow positive from day one. We've now got 35 staff, and we haven't hit cash flow positive yet.
None of us have experienced that, have we? No.
So I guess from a business planning perspective, we had to be really, really dynamic in how our business plan evolved,
yep.
and how the consumers and the providers were interacting with our business to go, gee, things are actually pointing in the right direction, and if we pump a ton of capital into this thing, then we can raise it to that level and play in the same league as a Seek or a What If or a Real Estate.
Yep. So what kind of research did you have to do to put those proposals together?
It's a combination of really, really knowing your business, having a good business plan, and knowing the intimate details of what people are going to ask in advance.
Yep.
But then over and above that, I personally read a lot of the stories of the Googles and the eBays and those other successful businesses to look at the business models and understand the business models and the scalability of what's actually required to get to that level.
Okay.
If that answers your question.
Yep.
Sure.
Yep. So how hard has it been out of a scale out of 10?
To raise capital?
Yep.
Yeah. Pretty well. There's tens of thousands of businesses that want to raise significant capital.
Yep.
And we've been on the lookout for forever. We've been asking all of our rich friends, I walked up to Lindsay Fox at a function and said, "We've got to have a coffee." Never got to have that coffee. But he looked rich enough. We went to a lot of seminars. There's a lot of sort of startup companies that are all based around, we're a market that matches capital with businesses. I think there's small scales offering board
yep.
and stuff like that, which is just phenomenally expensive. We went to brokers, and we talked to overseas venture capitalists and in the UK and the like. And after a while, we hit on someone that we got along with and that we trusted and that was really well connected and lived up to every word that they said. And then that was only the start of it.
Okay.
So, yeah,
that was the first part. So Matt, tell us, in terms of getting a company ready to actually get extra cash flow into and preparing it to that stage,
yep.
How solid does the company need to be before we actually approach for money to take it to the next level?
Well, we ideally spend a couple of months with our companies. I mean, I suppose I don't know, some of you may have heard of investor readiness. A lot of people talk about investor readiness. And I suppose as far as I'm concerned, there's two elements of investor readiness. One is having all the key building blocks of the business in place that will satisfy an external investor. But it's then actually documenting that and communicating a story, because you can have the best opportunity in the world, but if you can't communicate it to someone, then you're sort of dead in the water. So,
yep.
So we'll spend quite a bit of time with our clients, not just bringing in other service providers, bringing in other expertise, matching them up to potential distributors and partners to try and build the story as strongly as we can before we take it to the investors, and then documenting it. And I suppose it's you know, you want to build it as much as you can, but there's limited time and limited resources and a limited window of opportunity. You know, a lot of these businesses, they could maybe do it organically or do it themselves, but, you know, fast-paced markets, you know, the opportunity's lost.
Yep. So do you actually do the pitch, or do they do the pitch?
Well, I mean, usually they do, but in some instances we'll be at the front line and we'll be the ones giving the elevator pitch in a lot of cases. And I mean, we have pretty good relationships with our investors, and so they will usually trust us, and so we sometimes, you know, don't have to give the best pitch for them to have a look at it. They'll have a look at it just because it's coming through us.
Yep. So coming back to the grants and the government grants, what types of grants are available?
Yep. Okay. Well, they're sort of categorised into a couple of components. There's the export-related grants, the export market development grants, which are basically, they give you a reimbursement of 50% of export-related expenditure that you incur. So you need to spend the money. You then get it, you put in a claim, and you get 50% of it back at the end of the financial year. And that's, I think you can claim up to $150,000 over a period of, I think it's up to 7 years. And so a lot of companies use that. There's also R&D related grants. There's two or three main programs. A program called the R&D tax offset and R&D tax concession. And the tax offset is one that is quite interesting, and some people don't actually know about it. For early stage companies who are spending on eligible R&D, instead of carrying that expenditure forward as a tax loss and matching it against future income, they can actually get that cashed out and get that back as a cash refund from the government prior to actually earning any revenue. And so that's 37.5% of eligible R&D before you've actually started generating revenue.
So is that R&D typically technology based?
Yeah, no, so there's a whole range of criteria, and I can't say I'm the expert in this specific area because we've got a whole team who look after it. But there needs to be a sufficient, to meet the criteria, there needs to be a sufficient level of innovation. There needs to be a sufficient level of risk that it can actually fail, and there's a few other criteria, but it needs on that basis. It's primarily sort of novel, you know, new technology or processes.
Okay. Yep. Do we have any questions? Yep.
It sounds like the process can go on for quite a while, and there's so much information that's going across to these people who potentially want to invest.
Yep.
What kind of protection is in place for the business that's providing all this information and this excessive amount of detail?
So if you can't hear that question up the back, is what kind of protection is available to the businesses that are supplying all of this information about their IP, basically?
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, I suppose we recommend that before you start the process, you protect as best you can all your IP and your technology. Whenever we get